Hi and welcome to the specially updated version of Battle of the Ports Spy Hunter. In this episode we're going to be featuring the NES version, which I actually didn't know about and I missed out on the last show, and it's a version that everybody basically said, where is it? So that's been added to this updated version of the show, plus one other version that nobody knew about, so maybe I can turn around and say, hey, you didn't know about this version, but I did. Only joking. Anyway, that's the Game Boy Advance version, also coming up in this show. It's said that the game designer George Gomez drew inspiration for Spy Hunter after listening to an audio cassette tape of music from James Bond films. So in 1983, his idea appeared all over the arcades in the US. Originally, Spy Hunter was meant to carry the James Bond license, however, the deal fell through. The object of the game is to drive down the roads in the high-tech Interceptor car and destroy various enemy vehicles with a variety of onboard weapons. When starting the game, you have a lead-in time, during which you have an unlimited supply of cars. Extra cars can be obtained by gaining enough sufficient points. During your pursuit of bad guys, you'll come across weapon trucks. Drive onto these to augment the car's standard machine guns with other weapons. 3 special weapons are available: oil slicks, smoke screens, and surface-to-air missiles. Each has a limited amount of ammo and are lost if the player's car is destroyed. It's also possible to convert the car into a speedboat for brief periods by driving through a special boathouse, which appears infrequently at the side of the road, after which the player is attacked by 2 different enemy speedboats. I normally have good things to say about the Atari 2600 ports of games, but not this time. Spy Hunter on the 2600 is rubbish. Control wise, it's rather fiddly, having to push up to accelerate and down to brake. Something I can imagine all the home computer ports doing too. But that's not the worst of it. It just isn't fun to play. Knowing what you are driving past is just a guessing game. Cars look bugger all like cars, and the weapon trucks look like regular trucks, which don't even look like trucks. What a mess this is. Yet another crappy Atari port. This version is for the Atari 8-bit line of home computers. In this port, the roads are barren, which makes you wonder why on earth a Spy Hunter is needed. When you do come across an enemy, they take forever to kill. I also can't figure out how to enter the weapon trucks in this port. And the shit just keeps on coming with the Amstrad CPC port from Choice Software. So what's wrong with this port? Well, for the start, the controls are way too slippery. The enemy cars take a billion hits before they explode, and it's rather slow. It's so bad even the AI has no worries about committing suicide. Fourth port in and yet another stinker. At least this version is kinda playable, but it's not without its problems. Main of which is the size of the enemies. It's impossible to have more than 2 vehicles on the road side by side. This makes navigating many of the areas rather tough. I can't say I actually enjoyed Spy Hunter on the Commodore 64, however it was better than what we've seen so far. The problem is that the controls are yet again too slippery, resulting in crashes way too often. Also, the enemies take a billion hits before they die. It's a shame too because this port doesn't look too bad. Finally, a port that plays more like the arcade game, but still not a very good port. This Apple II version uses 2 buttons, so there's none of that fiddling around with the keyboard when you would like to use the extra bonus weapons. The enemy cars also die in a reasonable amount of hits too. This could have been a great port, but sadly, it's let down by dumb AI and not many enemy cars to take out. Finally, a port that doesn't suck balls. The ColecoVision port is every bit as fun as the arcade original. Okay, maybe not as good, but it's still fun. The controls are nice, sound is respectable, and gameplay is how it should be. So far, the only port worth considering. Boo! Yet another crappy port. The MS-DOS version is very much like the Apple II port. I wouldn't be surprised if they were programmed by the same team. On the plus side, this version does have a CGA composite mode to give the impression of better colour. We are looking at the RGB CGA mode here though. Is this Spy Hunter or Spy Hunter 2? Well, it's neither, but then again, it's both, rolled into Super Spy Hunter. Sunsoft have gone and turned a reasonable game into a bloody good game. This is fantastic. Great soundtrack, lovely graphics with many cool effects, and silky smooth gameplay. You may have noticed that the game now features a rotatable weapon, which really adds to the gameplay. You also now blow up the trucks carrying the power-ups in order to receive them. This is much more fun than driving into one, stopping, then receiving the power-up. Super Spy Hunter is great. And here we come to the added section of this updated video. This is the US NES port of Spy Hunter, a version I had no idea existed. But as we all know, I'm not very knowledgeable about the NES or NES. So how is this port? Well, it's a fairly basic port like all the others, but it does resemble the arcade in looks and does control well. Is it as good as the ColecoVision port? That's a tough call. But I think I'll have to say no due to one point. In this port, you can still crash into an enemy even after you have blown them up, which is a little annoying. And onto the second edition, which is the Game Boy Advance port. This can be found alongside Super Sprint on a 2-in-1 cartridge. This is by far the worst port out of all of them. It's total shit. The controls are way over responsive and laggy beyond belief. The graphics are reasonable, but did you notice that the first car to appear is sponsored by McDonald's? Okay, it isn't really, but it may as well have been. Oh, and there's no Peter Gunn theme music. Even the Atari 2600 had that. This is a complete turd of a port. And back to the crap we go. The BBC Micro port does contain some pretty cool digital samples, and as a BBC Micro game goes, it does look fairly nice. However, the controls are what ruin this. It doesn't seem to be compatible with a joystick, so you're left using the keyboard, and boy is that a chore. A and S are used for left and right. Then you have two keys next to the return key as accelerate and brake. The cursor keys are the gears. Then a whole host of random keys are used for the weapons. It's a nightmare to play. And finally we come to the Gameboy Colour port, which ends the torture that this show put me through, besides the NES port. The GBC port is basically a port attempt to replicate the arcade game on the GBC. Maybe the original Spy Hunter wasn't that great, but the ports were mostly something else. With that said, let's take a look at all the ports running side by side.